there. Good evening and welcome to another program on Elaine's Extreme Paranormal channel. We have our special guest with us again tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce again to you Mr. Bret Yacobucci, who will be talking all about chakras. Good evening, Bret. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks for having me once again. I always look forward to having our chats and passing on a knowledge that I can for those who are listening.
Oh, that's great. Glad to have you. So we've got a series of questions for you.
Perfect. Perfect.
Are you able to hear me okay, Bret?
Oh, yeah. I can hear you fine. Don't you worry.
Okie dokie. So we've got some questions for you, if you don't mind. We'll just go right on and go ahead and start, okay?
Perfect. Yep. I'll see what I can do.
It's coming in, so. Okay, so when did you become aware of the chakras and what prompted you to start working with them?
Well, really, in all honesty, I wasn't really aware of them when I first started everything. When I first started, I was just kind of thrown into it, so to speak. Everything kind of kept happening as it was happening in my life. And I had a hard time understanding what was going on. And it was only probably, I don't know, about two or 3 years ago when I started to actually understand and work with them.
Right.
Little did I know that just through the basic art of meditation and everything from me growing up, you already learn how to work with them, just you don't realize that you're working with that, what you would call, or what I would call a chakra. And so it's one of those things where, you're aware of them, but you're not aware of them. And, they mean different things to different people. So, and, I have a feeling there's going to be a question about that a little later on. So I won't touch on that right now, but, they have a unique definition to each person and how they perceive them, how they understand them, how they work with them. And I'm going to do my best today to try and offer some insight, because, the Reiki will say one thing of how chakras work. Another belief system will say something else about how they work. And then there's me, where I have a completely back-ass words way of looking at it, which works for me. It works for me, and it works for everybody I work with. And it's similar to that electrical theory of do electrons flow positive and negative, or negative to positive? Right? Well, whatever works.
Sure. So would you please explain to us exactly what chakras are?
Okay, well, that's where I kind of figured we would start, and which is a very good thing. Now, chakras were first introduced probably roughly around, to the Hindus. Kind of had the Hindu belief system had a very strong understanding of them, at least from what I can tell. Probably sooner than that, I don't know exactly. But basically what they are is they are a set of energy points that essentially manage our body and manage not just our human body, because the Reiki and everything, the common belief is that there's 7, and all those yoga people out there and all those yoga instructors, you can gladly slap my hand now if you want, because they know there's more, and there's a lot more. I've heard upwards about 120 something different chakras.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
However, they're all managed by 7 major ones. And then there's another 7, 8 more on top of that not only manage ourselves, but also the cascade effects of our parallel selves and souls and so on and so forth. But to deal with just our direct human existence, it's about 7 is what manages us. And some people, like I said, I see them as rings. Some people that I've worked with see them as balls of light. Some people see them as triangles. Some people see them as squares. And some see the harmonic vibrations Other people that I've worked with see the colors. Other people know it by how it sounds, as crazy as that sounds. You know, and other people know it just by just feel. So again, it like ultimately it's how you perceive them and how you choose to work with them. And I myself, I've made a few tweaks to the traditional systems that work with the way that I do it and the way that I kind of teach it. And it, you know, it kind of it makes sense when I do it. You know, but again, that's just the way I do it. I have no formal Reiki training. I have no formal training whatsoever. But you know, I've managed to go through a lot of trauma and a lot of different things throughout my life and come out relatively okay. Quote is relatively because, you know, we're all healing, we're all growing, we're all experiencing. And, you know, the chakra balancing techniques that I learned and the way that I work with my own chakras and the way I try to work with other people with their chakras has really helped my understanding with my own healing, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. And it, you know, the system I have is unique, I guess is the way to look at it. Much like my business name and everything, UPM, Unique Perspective Metaphysical. It's because I look at things in a different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, well, already I've learned a heck of a lot. I don't know much about chakras, believe me, but you've already explained a lot. Okay, what are the major chakras in our bodies? Where are they located and how do they affect us?
All right, into the meat and potatoes, are we? I love it. I love the meat and potatoes. It makes a delicious dinner.
Yeah.
So anyways, so like I said, there's 7, and those 7 are, actually, I have a picture because I started to write a book about this kind of stuff, and then I felt it no need. So I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it well, but there's the picture, and the triangles represents where one of the chakras is. Roughly, it varies slightly person to person, but you have your 7 chakras. Like I said, you have upwards of 120. But that's you're starting to get in all the different organs and veins and all that neat kind of stuff. But your 7 major chakras are, you got your crown, which sits, as the picture says, above your head, just anywhere between 2 and 4 inches. Then you got right here is your 3rd eye. Then you got your throat, and then moving down to around where about parallel with your heart is obviously your heart chakra. And then moving down, you got your solar plex chakra, which is located, as it insists, is in the solar plex. And then you got your sacral chakra, which sits in between, or about your belly button. Probably a little above it for most people, but it, like I say, it shifts. And then you got your root chakra, which sits about the root of your, about the base of your spine. And each one governs essentially a different part of the human manifestation, so to speak, at least overall. And you know, if you like, I can try and go into detail about them a little bit. I do have a lot of different details I can go into, but you can get lost in it very easy, very, very easy. So I can do that if you would like, and kind of elaborate. Okay. So the crown chakra, you know, as everybody kind of sees it. Actually, let me rewind that for a minute. Traditional Reiki, this is where I kind of differ. Traditional Reiki and traditional belief systems dictate that your energy flows from your feet up to your head. So in other words, kind of from your feet up. Again, that's like that electrical theory. Do electrons flow from positive to negative or negative to positive? It all depends on how you look at it. And so when I work with chakras and energy, I don't start from my feet. I start from up top. I start from the crown chakra in my head and allow the energy to flow downward. Because your feet ground you to the earth, and the feet allow that energy exchange to happen with the earth. However, your celestial energy, your source energy, comes from up top or upstairs. So that's why I see it when I work with energy, is that it comes from the top and works its way down. And so that's the major difference between what I do and versus the traditional Reiki instructors and practitioners do. However, that being said, no technique is incorrect. It all depends on what works for you. It all depends on how you want to work with it. The traditional sense with the Reiki is the way they like to go from the root chakra up as opposed to the crown down, is because the root chakra is supposed to deal with your most basic human survival instincts and, you know, basically kind of your unconscious mind. So that's why they like to, that's why that's that practice is start from the root up, hence it's the root. Like a tree, that's your base. That's what gives you your nutrients, your life. So with that being said, I go the other way, they go this way, 6 one, half dozen the other, whatever ends up being comfortable for you, the practitioner, the user, the healer, whoever, whatever capacity you happen to do it. But since we've already talked about the root, we'll start working our way up. The root chakra is basically the chakra that manages, like I said, your survival instincts, you know, your basic human, like absolute basic human needs. How to word it? You know, like, you know, your fight or flight response. Generally, it's like a reddish color is what I've been told what it looks like. And generally, it varies from person to person. However, with that being said, quite often, if you're very angry or if you just feel disconnected, there's either an issue with your root or your crown chakra. Moving up from that, you then got your sacral chakra. And depending on who you ask and who you talk to, it governs a number of different things. But what a lot of people do say is that, in my own personal experience, is that it governs the a bit of your creativity, as well as some of your kind of your less than primal emotions. So you start getting into liking and dislikes, that kind of stuff. However, with actually, I just read an article that some would say that it deals a lot with your creativity, partly with your intuition, but your creativity. Again, it all depends on what works for you. So then you move up one more. You now move into the solar plexus chakra, which is a personal favorite of mine, and that solar plexus chakra, to me personally, I hold it very near and dear. It holds the representation of willpower. That is basically, to me, that's what, like, whenever I was going through my struggle, that's where I felt most of it was on my solar plexus chakra, and that's where I felt most of the pressure build up, most of the tension, that kind of stuff, because it was always a battle of willpower when I was going through my struggles. Moving up one more, you now have the heart chakra. The heart chakra is just as it says. It generally deals with emotions such as love, affection, self-confidence, that kind of stuff. Anything to do with, you know, with love, with positive energy, that's kind of where it sits. You move up one more from that, you now start getting your throat chakra. The throat chakra, again, depending on who you ask, but in my own opinion, it's about, you know, being truthful about what you say, being able to speak the truth in a very tactful way without being offensive to anybody, because in modern day society, we always got to worry about how we say things because we might offend somebody. Thank you, modern society. But, you know, you're really careful how you say things these days. Just something as one sentence can completely ruin someone's day. The throat chakra basically deals with that, with being truthful, with dealing with that kind of stuff. With I'm trying to get the words out because I have a whole bunch of stuff flowing through my head right now. But basically, you know, if that's blocked, it's, you know, it's something to do with whether you're not being honest with yourself, if you're not being honest with others. That's the big thing about it. You then move up to the third eye, which sits somewhere around here. Could be a little higher up, could be a little lower, depending on, again, the individual.
Right.
And it's probably one of the most task-specific chakras, with essentially being able to perceive high vibrational energies in any capacity, whether that's through dreams, through intuitive abilities, through those feelings, you know, whatever capacity to classify intuitive and psychic abilities, that's what it's basically there for. And the you know, the medical society and everything else have always have you know, put that your pineal gland is where they found that all that kind of stuff kind of happens. There's truth to it, but ultimately the whole chakra system, the whole body works together as a system to work to get the information, not just one specific spot. But before we go into that, the last one, the crown, which again, like I said, sits about here, and that one basically deals with you know, your actual connection to the higher source. And I'd say that in a very broad sense, because it's whatever you believe is the higher source, whether it's God, whether it's universal energy, one consciousness, whatever it happens to be, that's it. That's where it kind of governs that connection. And is any one more important than the other? No, they are all essentially just as important as one as the next, and just as important as the previous one, because it's a system. One of the chakras is out, then that throws the whole system out of whack, and then everything else tries to compensate, and then they get thrown out of whack, and you can see the cascade effect as it goes down.
Okay. So how does a person tell then? I'm sorry. Carry on.
Sorry, continue.
How does a person tell then if their chakras are balanced or unbalanced?
Well, that's
or something that they get, or
yeah. Again, it's all about listening to your body, right? Whenever I basically start with anybody on anything, because whenever I start with anybody in any intuitive training or guidance whatsoever, there's two things I start with. One is learn how to meditate, because that is important. If you can't meditate, you can't quiet yourself enough to do anything metaphysical, yet alone be able to kind of calm down with today's busy society, because today is a very rush, hustle and bustle society. And so the emphasis is on just keeping going, keep moving, keep being busy. Don't stop and think. Don't stop and smell the flowers. Don't stop and take care of yourself. Just keep going. And unfortunately, that doesn't do very well for our spiritual selves, because we are so busy all the time.
Right.
So first thing, you need to know how to meditate. Secondly, once you can meditate, and once you get to a point where you can meditate, you can then start to feel. The easiest way I say is if you just kind of pull yourself out of your body and look.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Carry on.
No worries. You'll end up seeing things. You'll end up seeing.
Can I call you back? Thanks. I apologize for that. I apologize for that.
No worries. No worries.
I had no idea.
It happens.
Yeah.
No worries. So where was I? Yes. So then the second thing is, once you get to a point where you can actually listen to your body, whether you do it through physical means, intuitive means, or a combination of both, which is the ideal scenario, you can then start to feel things that are off. When there's certain sicknesses or certain illnesses, I've been able to kind of trace back to a chakra being cut up or not working properly. And that's one way that I do it. Second way is when you're doing like just if you have an issue, if you have something that keeps coming up, like say for example, you can't quite think clearly, or you can't focus well enough. More than likely, it's something to do with your crown chakra, third eye, or even possibly your solar plex chakra. And those would be the ones that I would look at. And the neat thing is as you get more adept at working with your own chakras or working with others in that process, there's certain sensations that I found that I experience personally whenever something isn't working right. And just when I'm just doing a quick scan of myself or when I'm meditating, I just kind of let energy flow. Whenever I meditate, I always meditate with intention, because just meditation on its own is good, but it doesn't really achieve anything. You have to have meditation with intention so that you're always doing something productive. You're always working towards a goal. But I'm letting energy flow. And if I feel like something's stuck, or if I feel tightness, like that's how it mainly manifests with me, is say, for example, I'm having self-esteem issues or I'm feeling really down on myself. Well, you know what? My solar plex chakra will actually hurt when I'm meditating or when I'm letting energy flow. And that's how I tell. You could, if you're in the intuitive kind, you can use pendulums, you can use stones, you can use any number of means that you're comfortable with to figure it out. The primary thing that I have to keep stressing is that make sure you're comfortable with what techniques you use, because they have to work for you. You have to believe in them. You have to work with them. And that's what's important.
Okay. I think you've probably partly answered the question that I was going to ask next, and that is, how does someone go about balancing their chakras? And I think you've answered that pretty well already. Or do you have more to add?
Can you repeat all of that? You came in very choppy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I see. I think you've already.
Well, I could keep going on for a long time, so you can keep going with the questions to keep it.
Okay. I think you've probably already answered the next question, and that was going to be, how does a person go about balancing their chakras?
Oh, that's a whole other ballgame altogether.
Oh, okay.
Because I basically, with that, I just identified how to kind of get a feeling on how to tell when something's wrong or something's going on. So remember how when I said when you're balancing your chakras, or when you're running through, they each kind of have an emotion or a certain set of behaviors that are attached to them. Well, they also have a counter. They have one set. They kind of have one side where it throws them out of whack or it throws them out of alignment, and then they have another side which kind of helps bring things back in. And so that's where knowing yourself, knowing when something's going on, when you're feeling off, where it's going to help you. So the way that I envision when I'm doing a chakra balancing, because I see them as rings, and I believe I might have touched on this in our last session that we talked. But I got a neat picture that, again, it wasn't one of my things. That was an illustration. You might not be able to see it very well through the camera with the lighting. But those are the rings. The big black arrows represent the general energy flow.
Okay.
And the other little ones that are they represent each chakra's energy flow. And so what happens when I see it, when I'm working with somebody, is if the ring is spinning like this, as if you're using a hula hoop, as long as it's spinning like this, it's not interrupting the energy. It's not interrupting the energy flow. Now, when something's out of whack, the ring might be, when I'm looking at it, it might be deformed, might be out of shape, but generally it's doing this as opposed to spinning like this. It's doing this, and it's literally cutting the energy up as it's going through it. So now, as it moves down the different chakras, it's going to start to affect everything else and have that cascade effect, because now you don't have a steady energy flow. And so then it starts going around it, it starts getting chopped up. And so that's how I see it. Someone who sees colors, or sees them as balls of light, or small portals, or small doorways, whatever the case may be. mainly the light seems to be the biggest one that people see, and see them as each of the individual balls of light. When you're looking at it, because generally if you're seeing them as balls of light, you have that capability to be able to remote and pull yourself out. And so when you see it as the balls of light, a lot of people that I've worked with who see them as the balls of light say they look dimmer. Some of them even said they're like bright out sometimes in one extreme case. And so then to bring everything back with my thing is I try to get it to spin this way. And I generally, I'll envision using energy to get it to spin. However, from a cognitive aspect, you can do some deep research into why you're feeling that way. Because generally, if a chakra is out, it's because something's happening, an emotional imbalance, a set of events that's happening on right now. Any number of scenarios could be causing it.
Okay. I've got a question here for you, if you don't mind. One
Yes.
of the viewers said that they have had out-of-body experiences, but they can't control them. And would working with chakras be helpful in this process?
It would give the individual more control over their own energies. It's the first step in the many that you would have to take to be able to help control those out-of-body experiences. But it is something that you would have to work on. It would help, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So, back to my point.
I'm sorry, carry on.
It's okay. Once I get going, I don't like to stop. It's just, so if there's any questions, just pop them in. I'll answer them right away. And so now, take, for example, the crown chakra. One of my personal favorites, next to the third eye in the throat, because I do believe in speaking the truth all the time. However, the crown chakra has to do with, what was that show that put it together really well? Avatar. The anime show Avatar did a really basic understanding of the 7 chakras, which, believe it or not, are very accurate. And the way that they put the crown chakra was the crown chakra, you have to be aware of what you have, but not be attached to the physical things that you have. And so generally people who have a hard time connecting with their spiritual self, or feel that frustration or feel that disconnect because they feel they're unable to work with their higher selves, they're attached to too many physical things. So they have to remove that physical attachment in order to be able to start to look at the spiritual aspect. And so that is just one way that you can cognitively work with that chakra specifically. And each chakra has its own different things, the different emotional triggers, different harmonic triggers that all work. One very easy way to balance your chakras, believe it or not, that I end up giving to everybody is just search YouTube for Tibetan singing bowl guided meditations, specifically geared towards the chakras, because they literally, each one has a slightly different variation, but each one works the same. All the Tibetan singing bowls, they work extremely well at creating a natural created binaural beat. So your conscious mind has a very difficult time keeping track of what's going on. So then it allows things to get balanced because you're no longer you're no longer focused on what's going on, because you can't, because it's messing with your mind. Plus they feel good too. I listened to one before I did this because I was having difficulty sleeping, and it kind of just balanced everything out really well for me. And that's probably one of the easiest way, without going into great detail about the different aspects, emotional triggers of all of them. Because again, it's about the user's perspective, the practitioner's perspective. Because I just did a quick Google before this on, just to see what was out there, different chakra stones and different things. And literally everybody has a different opinion on what works and what doesn't. Okay. So ultimately, in the end, it's what you decide works for you, how you perceive it. and how you choose to work with it.
I really like the sound of those Tibetan singing bowls, is what you called them?
Yes, Tibetan singing
I like
bowls.
the
Yes.
sound of them.
Yes. Yeah, I have one. I'd like to have more, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
But they're neat because they produce a natural binaural beat, and rather than an artificial binaural beat, it's a naturally created one. So there's no interference. There's no potential for things to get in there to mess things up because it's naturally produced.
Yeah. I know in one of the stores in Huntsville where I bought some smudging equipment.
Yep.
And they cleansed it in the singing bowl first before they gave it to me, and I like the sound of it. It's a rather relaxing sound.
Yes, it is. And obviously with the different ones, because the reason why there's kind of 7 chakras is because in our music and in our general musical notes that we understand as humans, there's 7 major notes from my understanding. I'm not a musician by any means. I'm no musician. In fact, I can barely keep rhythm when it comes to any sort of instrument. But they all have, like, all the different A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They all are actually tied to a different chakra and the relative frequencies that they put out. And the neat thing about the Tibetan singing bowls is that, believe it or not, they all have, depending on the size and the material and how they're constructed, because that all plays a part in how they sound. Because the difference between a ceramic singing bowl and a metal forged, beaten, like hand hammered singing bowl, it's night and day. The ceramic singing bowl might have this nice smooth sound to it, and obviously the hand hammer metal bowl will have this very high pitched metallic sound. And if you work through the different practices with that, kind of neat, because with this one gentleman that I listen to, he has, I think, upwards of 200 or 300 different singing bowls that he uses, and he uses a large one in that tone, a medium one in that tone, and a small one in that tone, because they each hit the variance in the chakra frequencies. And so it is very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, you ready for the next question?
Yes, I am.
Okay. When it comes to working with stones or crystals, I've heard that there are certain stones that correspond with different chakras.
Yeah.
What stones would work to help balance each of the different chakras?
Now, that's one of those questions that, I may have said it before, but I'll say it again. I keep everything simple. I run under the KISS theory, right? Keep it simple, because the more complicated it gets, the more harder it is when you're under pressure or when you have to understand what's going on to function, to work with that. So I'm going to tell you my way first, and
Sure.
then I will do my best to try and touch on the other ones. However, again, there's so many different variants and very, very varied opinions on what stones to use for what, that ultimately, in the end, it's up to you. So in my opinion, all you need is a quartz, some type of metallic. Iron is the best, obviously. Citron, amethyst, tourmaline, and hematite. Those are the only 6 you need, because the rest of the work I do through my own techniques, my own practices.
Okay.
I've never really used stones to balance chakras per se, because my theory is learn how to do something first and then use stones or use tools to augment it, rather than rely on those tools first, and then when you go to try and do it on your own, you can't. Where if you learn how to do it first on your own and then throw your tools to it, it's far more effective. So when I'm balancing chakras for somebody, like I say, those are mainly the 5 that I use. And what I do is I put the iron, quartz, and amethyst near the top of their head, or near, like, I try to have them either lay down on a table or a reclining chair, So I will put them on the ground, you know, roughly where their head would be. Or if I have a table nearby, which I generally do, I'll try and put it near that. And then as it moves down, I'll try and put probably the tourmaline around where the heart is. If not at the feet, with the hematite and the citron will be somewhere in the center, probably around where the heart is as well. Depending, it depends what everybody needs. And then I would do my work that way. There's sometimes I just use a quartz and iron up here and my hematite on my feet. Sometimes that's how I feel I need, if I need to use stones at all. Now, when it comes to the various stones that you can possibly use, I've never looked into the exact specifics because I keep everything simple. Ultimately, quartz and tourmaline and a heavy metal are all you should actually need for just about any type of work you can do, because the quartz is a completely programmable stone. It's a blank slate. It can do anything you need it to do. You just have to ask it to do what you want. And it's neat because the reason why I like the quartz and the iron is a very good energy sink. So if any surges or anything comes up, it sucks it up and slowly releases it, as opposed to just letting everything come through.
So you just sit it on top of your head?
Basically, yes.
And think what?
That's where I was getting at. Yeah, that's where I was getting at. Because I see my chakras in harmonics, in sound waves, and that's what they operate on, right? And I know my own chakras and how they operate. Now, bear in mind, these are very quick numbers. It's not precise in any way, shape, or form. But your crown chakra that I've seen operates anywhere between 1,000 kilohertz, you know, somewhere in that range. Could be higher, could be lower. Your third eye, you're now looking at about somewhere, you know, in the vicinity of about 400 kilohertz. You know, and then you move down your throat, which that now operates somewhere in the 900 hertz area. Could be a little higher, could be lower. Again, varies from person to person and what's going on. And then everybody knows your heart chakra is 428, but again, that fluctuates. And then as you get down into your solar plex, that one sits around 362 for me. You move into your sacral, that one sits about 200 and something. Again, that one I find varies the most. If I'm having a very creative day, it's really up there. If I'm having a down day, it's really down there. That one I have the hardest time balancing, believe it or not. And then the root sits anywhere between 90 and 120, depending what's going on. And so that's how I see it. So when I put the quartz up top and I want to work on my crown chakra, I focus on that frequency, focus on any emotional stuff that I have going on that might have to do with my connection to my higher source. And I basically just spin that chakra, let any emotions that happen to be coming through, come through, process them, work with them, see why they're there, and then let it go. And then move down to my third eye. And then focus the quartz and then on that frequency, get that chakra spinning the right way. Or if it's a ball of light you see, try to get that ball of light back out to its radiant ball that it was. Or if it's a square or triangle, you know, whatever you know, whatever you see as a healthy chakra, get it out to that point. Allow any emotional release that happens with it and any cognitive release that happens with it, and then let it go. And then you keep moving down. But where I differ when it comes to doing that is I don't forget about my crown, my third eye. As I'm going down, I keep the energy flowing through all of them, so that as you keep moving down and you make changes to one, all the others keep adjusting all the way up.
Okay, thank you. So, okay. I've heard of people being able to see the chakras. Do you think someone would have to be psychic in order to see them? And I think you've already described the next question, like what might they look like?
Yeah. Generally, when someone sees the chakras, you're seeing the overall aura, right? So whenever there's one lady that I when I used to do shows regularly, like vendor shows and psychic fairs, she has a camera that can, a camera setup and interpretation method. I don't know her exact techniques, but you sit down, she takes a picture, and then she interprets what she sees off your aura. And that's another way that you can tell what chakras are out and where you need to kind of work on in your life. You don't necessarily have to be psychic to be able to see it. I do believe that everybody has those moments where things are just dead on, and you happen to see that, you happen to see that energy just right there, and you go, oh, what was that? I've never seen that before. Okay. And, generally people, it only happens once in a while. Me being in tune as I am, for me to actually be able to see the colors of the chakra takes everything to be exact, because I don't necessarily see the colors. I feel the energy. I feel the intentions. I feel the vibrations of it. I feel the emotional attachments to it, but I don't see the colors unless it's like I'm really in tune, and that person, that's all they're thinking about, and that's all they're radiating. And like I said, I've answered that many times, what they might look like to people. Some people may, only one person I looked at ever only said that they look like giant bars. And that confused me. I was like, bars? What do you mean bars? He goes, yeah, when I remote view myself and just come out of my body, or astral projecting, come out of my body, I see just bars where my chakras are. Like, okay. But that was an individual's perspective on how he sees the chakras, right? And his idea was he saw the bars spinning instead of circles, like what I see are rings. If the bars were spinning like this, they were okay. But then when the bars were tumbling like this, they knock into one another, and that was his way of seeing things. And so, anybody who's watching or listening to this, feel free to contact me. I will gladly give you more information one-on-one, because it's far easier to give information one-on-one, because I can give you a personal read on what's going on. Because to speak generally about them, it's kind of difficult, because there's so many different ways you can go with it, the intuitive side, cognitive side, and everything in between. So I'm trying to give the best general information I can, because there's a lot out there. And to go back to the stones, do your research, because I just did a quick Google search on chakra stones. And for the root chakra, one person says that these 5 stones work. And then another person says these 5 stones work. Another person says these 5 stones work. Really, there's no center ground. There's no commonality. So ultimately, use what works for you.
Sure. Okay. So is there one chakra that you feel would be more important than the rest of them?
Now, I was hoping you would ask that question, because it's kind of neat the way that I see them. We're going to go back to my drawing here. You can't really see it all that well, unfortunately, but you see how I have the top 3 here, then I have 1 down here, and then the bottom 3. I refer to these top 3, the crown, the third eye, and the throat, as the celestial group of chakras. And what those are is that's dealing with your spiritual self, your higher self, your your metaphysical abilities, that kind of stuff. And then you have your root chakra, then you have your sacral chakra and your solar plex. They deal with your human self, your human aspects. And what chakra is it that's in the center of them all? The heart. And so, let's see if I have the other picture. Yes, I do. No, yes, I do. This one won't do very well. But basically, this picture here, which you can't really see all that well, but basically what it's depicting is the fact that if one's out of whack, that entire section is out of whack. And then if that entire section is out of whack, then the heart chakra, which I call the fulcrum point or apex point, which is why the heart chakra is probably the most important one to balance, which is the one that a lot of people have the issues with, is probably the most important, but they all carry the equal weight as well, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of, it's, so I'm saying the heart is probably the most important because it balances everything, but if any one is out, it's equally as, I don't want to say catastrophic, but they cause the same problems regardless, because it's a cascade effect as it goes down. And you know what? And it's easy to fix. You know, you bring that one that's out back in, and then the system works as it should. And it's kind of neat because as like if I had a bit more time to kind of prep, I'm very busy with overtime and other things too, I would have been able to draw a bit better of a picture, because then I could have shown the overall effects. So not just the individual chakras effects the body, but then all the overall effects and how each of them, it all cascades and loops together. It's fascinating to see when you're working on somebody how everything works together. I hope that answered the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Okay, the next question was, I think you've already answered this one as well. Like, aside from the major chakras in our body, are there any others that we should know about? And you've already pretty well gone through that.
Yep, yep. But I'd like to elaborate on that one, though.
Sure.
Because aside from your 7, the other major ones that I found that I work the most and that a lot of people have a lot of issues with are the ones that sit in your shoulders, elbows, wrists, hands, and then basically at every joint is kind of where there's kind of a chakra. So basically any of the chakras that are on your appendages. So whether your big ones that I've noticed when I'm working with people and people who are very touch healing, you know, like the contact mediums, the contact healers, that kind of stuff, people who have to touch to heal. The hands are the big ones. Anything to do with the hands, and then likewise their feet, because if you know those 7 manage everything, but then everything falls into subcategories of all of those. And so, what I would like to say, because I'm watching the time and I want to be able to answer probably 1 or 2 more questions before we run out of time. But basically, whenever I'm energy working and whenever I've seen anybody else energy work, energy flows this way, yes, but people draw off their primary hand and release off their non-dominant hand. And so if your chakras in your hands are out of alignment, then you get impeded energy in there too. So you start to get misreads in the information. If you don't have the chakras on your legs and primarily your feet balanced out properly, that will cause you to have issues with grounding, and you'll start feeling frustrated and angry for what seemingly is no reason. That's all kind of tied to your root chakra, but at the same time, they're all separate systems. So as long as your 7 main ones are in alignment, generally the subsystems and the subchakras are okay. Like they won't cause any issues because they'll fix themselves just through the transverse energy flow. However, there is extraneous circumstances where people either have current injuries from this life or past life where it's causing chakras to remain out of balance even though everything is in balance. And I can tell you, there's one lady I was doing a reading for. She kept when I was doing the reading, like I had not done any working out or anything, so I had no reason to be sore. But when I started doing the reading, I felt just shoulder pain. And upon talking to her and doing a bit of reading, I'm like, what's going on? Do you have shoulder pain? Because I'm really hurting. She goes, yeah. How'd you know? I'm like, well, it's been all your life, right? Like, she goes, yeah, I didn't injure it in this life, just I have shoulder pain. And turns out it was a past life injury that she never absolved herself from in the healing process in the soul transition. And so when she came into this life, she had a bad shoulder for seemingly no reason. And so that's one example of how a past life injury can still have an effect, even though your general chakras are okay and in alignment, everything's working properly. But this shoulder here, for example, in her case, that chakra was still improperly functioning due to that past life injury that wasn't absolved.
Okay. And now, just speaking for myself, I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I suffer from back problems, and that is
Okay.
from an injury that I had years ago. And sometimes the back pain is so bad, I've got to go and lay down fast, or I'm going to fall to the floor.
Yeah.
Which chakra would you suggest I work on in order to help alleviate the back pain?
That would be either your root or your sacral chakra, because that's part of your because it's in your lower back, right?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's the lower back, and other times it'll crawl right up in between my shoulder blades.
Yeah, because it's basically you'd want to work on kind of your bottom three, your solar plex, sacral, and your root chakra, because that would then align everything. And then even after you align those, if you still had those back problems, which you probably will, just the pain would be mitigated to some extent through certain things and certain theories. Can you completely eliminate it? However, usually it's mitigated to the point that it's down to a manageable level.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, do you have any recommendations or advice for people who might want to pursue working with the chakras themselves?
Well, I believe that anybody because it's very important. It's part of one of my next seminar that I have coming up in a couple weeks, April 7th, at the Purple Door in Cambridge. Details are on my Facebook page if you are interested in it. UPM on Facebook. That's part of. I'm going to try and touch on that a little bit with that, because it was all part of my mindfulness techniques, and being aware of what's going on in your body is very important. And the chakras are just another method of basically keeping in tune with your body, keeping an understanding of your body, because we're essentially walking antennas. We pick up everything. We pick up stuff off people, off our environment, off of solar flares, off of gravitational changes, radio frequency changes, pressure changes, moon phases. We pick up everything. And knowing when to interpret when it's you or when it's something else is important. So I do believe that everybody, whether it's in a cognitive fashion, whether it's an intuitive fashion, should understand at least how their own chakras manage themselves and how they work with themselves. And not just understand, but knowing how to kind of bring them back into balance, whether it's through music, whether it's through guided meditation, whether it's through, more active means that I do once in a while. You should take the time to figure it out. And my technique may not be for everybody. Find somebody who you're comfortable with learning from, who you're comfortable with working with. Whether it is going through Reiki, whether it is going through some of the branches of the Hindu spiritualistic belief system, yoga, whatever. As long as it works for you, as long as it works for that practitioner, and you believe it. Because if you don't believe it, it won't work. Regardless of whatever you're doing, whether it's in, if you don't believe it, if you don't have that passion, if you don't have that drive, it won't work. If you go into a chakra balancing session or a Reiki session and go, I don't believe it's going to work, but I'm going to see anyways. Well, it's not going to work, because no matter what they do, you're going to find something to circumvent what they did. So when you are working with chakras, be ready for emotional release, be ready for cognitive release, be ready for, anything really, because you don't know what you're going to stir up. And you know what? And it's something everybody should do.
All right. Well, thank you. You gave a lot of information tonight. Appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I'm glad to share what I know and what I at least can share anyways.
Yeah, well, by golly, it's hard to believe it, but our hour is nearly up. I think we've got about 5 minutes left in the hour, and that's it. It's gone by so fast. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I've been watching the time, going, okay, how am I going to fit some of this stuff in? Because I could.
That's a rush because if we go over the hour a little bit, it's not going to kill anyone, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, and you know what? And I'm glad that you, Elaine, are giving me the opportunity to do this, to be able to help others through what I can say and what I can kind of guide people with. And anybody who's listening or watching, I invite you to reach out to me on my Facebook page I think it's at UPM Cambridge. If not, just search UPM. I'm on there. I will gladly answer any questions. If you are in the Kitchener, KW area, or even in Southern Ontario, really, April 7th, I have my first intuitive and cognitive wellness techniques seminar, 1 to 4 on April 7th. You're welcome to come out to that. It's a bit about my story and kind of what I use to kind of help survive my my adventures. Let's call them that, because when you say trauma, it puts a negative effect on it. So adventures, we'll call them that going forward, because they made me who I am today, and I'm willing to share that with everybody, and I'm willing to help pass those techniques on. I also have a registered hypnotist working with me too. So if you don't believe what I'm saying, he can help you find the cognitive reasons and the techniques to work with as well. So it's a very good double whammy. It's a good bang for your buck. And you know what? If nothing else, you get to meet some new people and hear a neat story.
Sure. Yeah, and like you say, for everybody, the same method is not going to work.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, everybody has to find their own little niche, and that's about it.
Yep. You'll have dowsers who will use pendulums to clear chakras. You have anybody who's of the polytheistic belief systems or anything. They may use stones. They may use runes. Anything, whatever works. As long as it works for you, as long as it has a positive impact on your life and whoever it is you're working on, do it. Work with it, because that you have to believe what you're doing is going to work, because otherwise it won't work. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple. The human mind's a powerful thing, and you have to be able to believe it, because when you believe it, it puts it out there, and it will come back and work in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Just like, I guess, as you're saying, if you believe it, it'll work. Like the difference between positive and negative thinking. I know if you keep thinking negative all the time, well, things will work out negative. You try to keep thinking positive, things start straightening around usually.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In my few short months of my adventure, it's been all positive thinking. And you know what? This universe has no limit for what I'm capable of doing. And I intend on taking full advantage of that. And it's just pure positive thinking. And you know what? And whether it's chakra balancing, whether it's stone work, whether it's medium work, tarot, whatever you decide to do, keep it positive. Even if you're doing paranormal investigations and you're dealing with the darkest of energies, keep it positive, because that's important. Because the minute you now start going to that dark, that negative, it's now going to come back to you. Keep it positive.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again tonight.
Oh, no problem, Elaine.
Back on whenever you're willing to come in.
Oh, yeah, trust me, I can speak on numerous things. So as long as you keep having me, I'll keep coming back.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that. Okay.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Just joining in, our show is just about to end. Our special guest tonight was Bret Yacobucci. He was speaking all about chakras. So if you couldn't watch this show live, be sure to come back to the channel. You can watch it. It'll be recorded on there. And I do hope you enjoy it. He's given a lot of information tonight. So again, thank you so much, Bret. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Elaine. And thank you, Chewy.
Oh, dear. Okay. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. You have a great week. Hopefully, we'll see you next Wednesday. In the meantime, you take care. Bye for now. God bless.